The shogun's government was in a tough spot, and naturally had several meetings about what to do, especially with the emperor announcing his edict to expel all barbarians. It was decided in one of these meetings that the shogun, Iemochi, should meet with the emperor and apologize for the misgoverning. Hitotsubashi Yoshinobu would leave Edo ahead of the shogun on February 3, 1863. 9 days later, February 12th, the Mito daimyo Tokugawa Yoshiatsu would follow with his entourage. This would include Takeda Konsei, Yamaguni Hyobu, and Fujita Koshiro. While they were in Kyoto, the followers would have several conversations with others about how they felt about the current situation. Some of these conversations would be with the two retainers of the Chosu province, Kusaka Gensui and Katsura Kogoro. Fujita made plans with the Chosu to force the government to force all foreigners to leave. They would do this by raising armies in Kyoto and Edo. Takeda Konsei convinced them that the time wasn't right. Yoshinobu, meanwhile, in the imperial court already knew that they couldn't kick out their foreigners at this time. They just didn't have the power. He was incredibly worried that if he didn't come up with a plan before the shogun reached Kyoto, the shogun would receive harsh criticism, which in turn would be embarrassing for the government. The government wouldn't have to immediately bend towards the emperor's will, though. In Kyoto, during the month of August, 1,400 Chosu soldiers, along with 1,600 ronin, known as the Inshin Shishi, sought to kidnap the emperor and restore imperial supremacy. The armies of the Aizu under Matsudaira Katamori and Satsuma domain, led by Saigo Takamori, a name that we'll become quite familiar with, organized the defense of the imperial palace, along with an elite group of ronin called the Shinsengumi. Now let me know in the comment sections if I should do a special on them. Now, at first the rebels had some minor success, but this quickly ended, and they were forced to retreat. Now, it's unknown if it was done on purpose or not, but the rebels set Kyoto on fire. 28,000 homes were burnt in this. Around 400 of these rebels were killed, with only 60 on the shogunate-aligned forces. One of the rebels killed was Kusaka Gensui. The Chosu were blamed for this rebellion, and the shogun would order retaliation in September. But we'll cover that next time, I promise. The emperor would not be shaken from his will to have the foreigners kicked out of the country. October 13th, the emperor demanded from Yoshinobu to have all foreign ships leave Yokohama port, and on the 26th the same demand was made to Sakai Tadashike. Stalling was no longer an option, and with that, the government entered into negotiations with the foreign powers. These talks did not lead anywhere. In fact, several nations, such as Russia and France, refused to even attend some of these talks. Fujita Koshiro and others thought that the government was just too weak and would not do anything about Yokohama Harbor. So, they decided that they would form an army to enact the emperor's will. They then traveled around the Kanto region to gain more followers and money. On the 2nd of May, 1864, 62 men gathered at Mount Tsukuba. Because Fujita was only 23 years old at the time, they made the Mito town magistrate, Tamaru Inoemon, the commander-in-chief. From men with military backgrounds to peasants, they started to flock. Interesting enough, they started to call themselves Tenguto. The group tried to raise funds from Toshigi and Manabe, but failed to do so. They then set fire to these towns in anger, something that did not go unnoticed. The government then ordered the provinces of Hidachi and Shimotsuke to dispatch troops, track down the Tenguto, and kill them. On August 8th, the Tenguto attacked the shogunate-aligned forces at night at the Taoin Temple around Shimotsuma and lost the fight. Ichikawa Senzayamon and others on the conservative side would then run into Mito and occupy the castle there. Family members of the Tenguto were then either captured or shot, depending on if they resisted, and their houses burned. The Tenguto leadership would then focus on Mito. This caused many of the volunteers to become discouraged, as a lot of them were not from this province, and as a result of this, 500 members left. At first, they would stay at Mount Tsukuba, but later move on to Edo with the intention to force the foreigners in Yokohama to leave. They were surrounded by shogunate forces and wiped out though. The main body of the Tenguto, along with the feudal retainers of the Mito province, then went to the Mito Jo castle and fought against Ichikawa and the forces there due to their political differences. They would lose that battle and had to move to Nakaminato. While all that was happening, the daimyo of Shishido province, Matsudaira Yorinori, was given the command by the shogunate to suppress the rebellion. Now this is where things get a little bit confusing and messy. Takeda Konsei and many samurai who believed in Sonno Joi would follow him. There were small talks to discuss access to the castle, but ultimately Ichikawa would refuse. The two sides then fought in the suburbs of Mito. Yorinori then backed off and withdrew his forces to Nakamito. A group of the Tenguto then went and offered their help. Yorinori accepted and then moved into the castle town of Mito Jo. Another negotiation was held, but once again Ichikawa refused to have the castle gates open and the two sides fought once again. Yorinori then had to withdraw to Nakamito after losing. Because Matsudaira Yorinori had now been working with the Tenguto group, the government now also considered him a part of the rebellion. The Tenguto now started to flock to Yorinori and his forces at Nakamito. And while Yorinori was reluctant at first, many of his men, him included, started to agree with their ideas. Takeda Konsei would also join the cause. Shosito and Ishikawa, during all these constant back and forth, lost the battle at some point, which caused them to send a request to the government to send aid, which they did. Government troops under the command of Tanuma Okitaka now surrounded Nakamito. November 4th, Matsudaira Yorinori moved into the Mito Jo castle town to express his true intentions. He then committed seppuku. 1,000 members of Tenguto would then surrender to the government, with another 1,000 escaping and gathering at the Daigo village in the north part of Mito. They then had an emergency meeting where they made Takeda Konsei the supreme commander. Their new plan was to go to Kyoto and beg Yoshinobu to implement Sonno Joi, thus honoring the emperor's wishes. They also discussed that there would be no more looting, no more burning, and that they would pay for everything on the road to Kyoto. And to their credit, they did do that. It would take them approximately 2 months to reach Kyoto, though, and there would be several small battles with government-aligned local militias on the way. However, these resulted in very low casualties. These battles gave the Tenguto a fearsome reputation. Even the government troops kept their distance. The government was then able to organize a punitive force from the provinces of Hikone, Ogaki, Kuwana, and Owari, and Inuyama. This forced the Tenguto to take a different route to Kyoto, so they went through the Nakasendo Road. Yoshinobu then decided to go out himself and track the rebels down using troops from Aizu and Kaga. The Tenguto couldn't cross through Lake Biwa, so they decided to head to Ichizen. It's now January 8th, 1865, and the rebels have finally arrived into Ichizen. The Tenguto were walking into a trap though. The shogunate punitive forces led by Yoshinobu had guessed where they were heading and had arrived there first to surround them. It should be noted that this forced the leadership of the Tenguto to come to the realization that their wishes to have the shogun allow their vision to be told to the imperial court was never going to happen. On January the 14th, Takeda Konsei and the other leaders surrendered. On the 1st of March, Takeda Konsei and other key members were beheaded. And a few weeks later, on the 20th, 353 were beheaded as well. This ended the Tenguto No Ran.